couple years ago in the same week, I met two 52-year-old men. On paper, they looked very similar, but one was a surgeon. He drove up in his Maserati, had a base salary of about $500,000. My electrician came up. He was a guy, very country, missing a couple of teeth. He made $60,000 a year, but he lived off of 30. He's been doing that for 20 plus years. My surgeon made $500,000. He was spending about $600,000. My surgeon was absolutely dead broke. And this electrician that you never would give a second look, he had $2.3 million in the bank.
ADHD Rewired, episode number 70. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. But first, let me thank our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability Groups. To find out about the next ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability Group, go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We have a special episode today because we are doing something a little bit different. We have Beau Henderson, who is a financial advisor. He is the author of The Rich Life. These are two words that are really the hallmark of his company, The Rich Life Group. The Rich Life Show airs weekly in a nationally syndicated radio show, and he is the author of the recent bestseller book, The Rich Life, 10 Investments for True Wealth. Henderson is a master certified success coach. Are there master certified failure coaches? There should be, because, there's value in that. He's a radio host, a financial advisor. He's helped more than 3,000 families to discover their true relationship with money and equip them to live a healthy, wealthy, fulfilled life on purpose. You can find his new book at richlife.com. Beau, welcome to ADHD Rewired.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. So, Beau and I met. We are part of a mastermind group. There's it's us and 5 other people. I think I have those numbers right. And we're all podcasters doing various things in various kind of domains of business. And so we were talking last week, and I wasn't sure if Beau, would you be the right fit to come on the podcast? And then we had a conversation after our last week's mastermind session, and I was fairly certain that you would be a great fit. We even talked about, while you're not diagnosed with ADHD, as we were talking about what ADHD actually is, I saw the wheel spinning up there, and I
want to take the test. Want to take the test, please. So
before we get into the financial piece, because your background actually, you have your bachelor's in psychology, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Psychology, behavior, and finance are the two things that really fascinate me.
All right, and that's part of why we're having you on. So, what are some of the things as far as attention, focus that you struggle with when we're talking about ADHD?
The biggest things for me that I've had to learn to do, I realized that I was good at seeing big picture things. I was good at seeing the future,
mm-hmm.
But I had to learn to build things around me to handle details,
mm-hmm.
whether that's people or systems. And even with money, where we're going to get into that, it's something we all have to deal with. But the same kind of philosophy, I had to learn to help people and myself build systems and details, and you could actually be successful with money and not be the guy that loves spreadsheets, so to speak, or the accountant mind.
And
right?
you're speaking my language right there, because to me, spreadsheets is a nasty word. Man, I had to deal with some spreadsheet stuff just yesterday. I was doing accounting for my local Chad group. And I got to tell you, it's so deep in my red zone. So I'm hoping, Beau, that you can help me. Because, I do have that kind of big picture thinking. But when it comes to the details of stuff, especially with finances, my eyes just kind of glaze over, and I tend to sort of clam up and then just go on to do something else, although it's still there in the back of my mind. So the first thing I want to kind of ask you is, when you talk about the rich life, what do you mean by that?
So the rich life, I've been doing this business now, helping people with money for 15 years. And after the first 7 or 8 years, I realized that what I was taught to do, and a lot of what by marketing, media, what we're sold to believe, this idea that money equals success, money equals happiness was only, yeah, I'm a big fan of you having a lot of money because you can do a lot of great things with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't line that up in the context of for the purpose of living a meaningful life, then it's just money. And I realized that when I'd been doing this long enough to see several people doing really well with money, but have miserable, empty, bad relationships, bad health type of lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a rich life is a truly meaningful life to where you're lining up your tool of money to honor that thing that lights you up that you're probably made to do anyway.
So it sounds like you don't think about it as wealth and then happiness is two separate things. You're talking about it as being one piece, one tool in the kind of the bigger picture of our life. I've always liked the idea that money doesn't necessarily bring us happiness, but the lack of money can certainly keep us back from happiness.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you're in survival mode, you can $1,000 would sure make you a little happier. Absolutely.
So what do you think are the things that are the biggest roadblocks for people to really kind of dive in, to really understand their money, to go through the details of what do they need to do today so they can be living the life that they want to live, not just tomorrow? Because I think, I know that there are people that say, well, I want to just live in the moment and live for today, and I don't care about tomorrow because, I'll be dead and I don't really care. But I think that, to me, that's sort of a slightly a defense mechanism to this is hard to really figure out.
Right. One of my favorite things to talk about is what most people do, and I realized a long time ago that I did this and I had to fix it, was they approach money with what I call the very technical term ostrich with your head in the sand technique.
Mm-hmm.
You just bury your head in the sand, hope everything works out, and that's a really bad plan.
Yeah, I've done that sometimes.
But if we back up a little bit, and I think the question to ask to start this conversation is, where do we even start when we start thinking about money? And we have to start with why. Why?
I love that question, Beau. So you're asking the right question there. So why?
Right?
Why what?
Well, yeah, why? So why do I do what I do? What's important to me? And get clear on that, and then use money as a tool to honor those things that you've agreed up front are important to you. Because where we get in trouble is we give money this power, that it has this power to make us miserable, make us happy. And in all honesty, it's really just a tool that when we have good habits around it, it can lead us towards goals.
So what are some of those tools or those habits that you think are kind of fundamental to living the rich life?
Especially in the context of the conversation we're having and things I've learned, it's to make money easy. Some things you can do is we need to know where we are. We need to know our numbers. And like we said, that's not going to be, for me, it's not going to be actually putting in a spreadsheet. But what I can do is use one checking account and one debit card for all my core expenses. So at the end of the month, I have a tally of what went out. Mm-hmm. At least without the daunting task of, people talk about going and reconciling your receipts at the end of every day. I'm never going to do that. But if I have one place where I've used all my expenses, I can say, okay, last month I spent $3,000 on expenses. This month I spent $2,800 on expenses. Hey, I'm probably moved in the right direction this month.
Well, so you're saying that we don't actually have to track all of our receipts in order to keep track of our finances.
That's right. Automate as much as you can, because you're much better to do that technique of use your debit card statement as your tool than waiting until you're going to track receipts, knowing honestly you're never going to track receipts. And it's behavioral styles. Certain behavioral styles are never going to do that. Another thing that you can do is, if it makes sense, or especially if you're dealing with a business, spend $50, maybe $100, and have a bookkeeper do this for you. Send him your debit card statement, have him give you the summary page, because I'm guessing you're wired a little bit like me. I like the summaries. I like here's the one page summary of all the stuff.
I want the colored like a graph that I can make sense of what's going on with my finances in like 3 seconds just by looking at a picture.
That's right. Give me the big picture of the snapshot of where I stand, and you that's your behavior style and it's wired better to do that. You go through the details to give me that picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, when it makes sense, you can hire a bookkeeper if especially if there's a lot going on. Another thing is I talked about automate. And what I mean by that is say we know we need to start saving for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And we've identified one of our priorities is making sure that at some point we're not dependent on having to work. We want a freedom day.
Mm-hmm.
So automate might be, okay, we determine we need to save $300 a month to move towards that goal. Have that come out automatically up front. Set up your account so that drafts and that's done on the front end. And even your debits, even your expenses that come out every month, like your utilities, automate those.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you do that, because what tends to happen is we tend to honor our priorities with whatever's left over. And guess what? What's usually left over at the end of the month?
Nothing.
Right. We find a way. If it's sitting in an account and we haven't given it a place to go up ahead of time, it tends to inefficiently leak somewhere. For me, it might go to 3 or 4 fancy coffees a day if I'm not careful.
Now, but what about people who feel like they've been really watching their finances and say, I have no money to left over at the end of the month to save, and I want to save? Like, how do people kind of deal with that? How do you help people with that?
Sure. There's a couple of things we can look at. One, some people will say a rule of thumb, you should be saving 10% of your income. And sometimes that would be part of a formula. Maybe save 10, pay off debt with 10, and live off of 80. That's great. But if you need almost every penny you have to survive, you might need to adjust that formula initially to 98-1-1
mm-hmm.
and at least take a baby step in the right direction. So let's save 1%.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there's 2 things we can do. We can either find a way to increase income. But a lot of times, if we look at our expenses, on average, when I look at somebody's expenses, we free up $200 to $300 a month just in things we're paying for already that you could probably do a little better with if you really looked at it and tracked it.
Like what?
Things, your home and auto insurance is an example. A big one is eating out. People will guess they eat out and spend they'll come in and guess $300 and we'll actually look at it and it's $800-900. We'll actually look at it. So it's just having some goals and having some boundaries, giving yourself some. Now that's not a fun word, but could I live off of $600 of food instead of $900? Probably, and that would free up the money for my savings plan.
About a year ago, I convinced my wife just to start shopping for some of the things at Aldi.
Right.
And it's an extra step, but man, the stuff that we can get there, which is, just as good, it saves us a ton. We're talking probably $200 a month we're saving because we're getting, a bunch of the stuff that we can get at Aldi at there. Cause we have to bring our own bags and put a quarter in the cart to, and it's these little things that actually make a big difference. And yeah, it's, as you kind of we're talking about, it's a behavioral thing. It is an inconvenience. It's a little bit of extra work. But $200 a month, that adds up.
Let me speak to that, Eric. So $200 a month. So one of the things I teach people is the cost of waiting to save money, because again, a big picture person,
mm-hmm.
I'll say when I have an extra $2,000 a month, I'll put it aside, or $1,000 a month. But what I spend a lot of time teaching people is $150 a month. We call it a $5 a day retirement plan. If I found that extra coffee and I put $5 a day, $150 a month aside. Now, this isn't really sexy, but over 40 years, I would have $1 million. So at an average interest rate. So you teach a young person that. And one of the things I'm excited about, we get a 20, 22-year-old started on a plan like that. They're going to be great. But what happens if you start with a plan today, you start seeing it accumulate, you find a way for that 150 to creep up to 200. And before long, you're saving $300, $400 a month. And you're really making up some ground.
Now, what if someone is in their, maybe 40s, even 50s, mm-hmm. and they're like, I've intended on putting money away, since I was in my 20s, but now I'm in my 50s and I still haven't done it.
Well, this is a statistic that makes a lot of people feel better. The average person in the United States doesn't start saving for retirement until they're 53 years old. Now, the reason is
it seems late.
Yeah, well, the reason is they're busy working on their career, raising a family, and by the time that's kind of the families, the kids are in college, and they're like, "Oh wow, I need to handle this." They're 53 years old on average. So all that to say is we don't have the most valuable thing. We don't necessarily have time, but you still have a good 10, 15 years to work on saving. So in the 40s and 50s, maybe 20 years, and the goal would be hopefully you're at a place in your career where you're maybe making more than the 19, 20-year-old doing the $5 a day plan. Maybe you start with a $10 a day plan.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to make up either we got to make up with a little more money, or either ramping, meaning a lot of plans I'll set up. It starts with $150 a month, but a year later it bumps up to $250, and we're kind of growing with a person's business or their income, or as their debt's dropping off.
Okay, let me ask you this. So, one of the challenges that I have when thinking about retirement is, okay, so how much money do I want in retirement? How do I know how much I want? Like $1 million sounds like a lot. Is it? I mean, how do I know?
Yeah, it's almost the fun part for me with money is making it a game and making it a puzzle. So what we have to look at is we need to pull what your Social Security credits may be, if there's any.
And how do you find that out?
You could go to socialsecurity.gov,
okay.
.gov, and we could all print out a statement that would give a record of our earned credits and what our retirement benefit would be at 62, 66, and 70. So we look at that. So say you've got $1,500 a month coming from Social Security, and we take a really honest look at your expenses, and you need $3,500 a month to pay your basic expenses. What we've got to do is we've got to solve for what amount of money do we need to make up that difference between $3,500 and $1,500. So $2,000 a month. How much do we need to have saved to throw off that $2,000 a month?
So you base it on what your current expenses are, and then you project it for the estimated lifespan. Is that?
Yeah, you got to project for inflation. We got to make sure that it's growing.
Because now you're just making my brain hurt, and this is where I start to shut down. And I'm telling you, and I'm just giving it to you like real how. So even when I go to my accountant, we start talking about this stuff. I'm like with them for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then my mind just goes somewhere else. Well, help me out here, man. This is because I want to be able to have that financial freedom where I'm not having to, I want to be able to do what I want when I want. I don't need all these luxurious. I'm not looking to get a boat. I'm not looking to have a mansion. I'm not looking to have, vacation homes in, different continents. I want I want some of the nice things of life, Right. I don't need to drive a really expensive car. For the most part, I live a fairly modest lifestyle. I like nice things every once in a while.
Right.
But I guess going back to how do I figure out without it making my eyes glaze over, but how do I know how much I need to save?
Well, the same thing. I think one of the keys to this is let's build a team that typically when I'm working with somebody, we're working with an accountant, we're working with a financial advisor, sometimes an attorney's involved for wills and some powers of attorney type of things, and people you trust and are co-creating this plan with over the long term, but people that are taking care of the details about the stuff that's not fun, like talking about inflation, but they have the same end goal. They say, okay, Eric, I know your goal is to be able to pay your bills and live your life without worrying about money. They're helping you. They're back up for you to do that. Now, it's important you know what's going on, but for you to get bogged down in the details month to month, that's just not going to be successful.
Okay.
Well, I think building a team around you, but a key with building a team is you want to make sure it's people that you really sync with, because if you're going to do this right, you're going to be working with these people for 30 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So
I need to find someone that understands that I'm going to kind of shut down fairly. My window for being able to have a meaningful and productive conversation about this stuff, it's short. I mean, it is. It
might be instead of a client review that would be 2 hours. Say, okay, we're going to do quarterly 15-minute check-ins. I'm going to send you the summary sheets, and we're just going to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that sounds like something I can digest. And it seems like a lot of this stuff, it comes down to an issue of just education. And it's like with going back into the schools, we're all focused on those core curriculum stuff. Teaching kids how to take tests, which is completely useless because any piece of information is available in the palm of our hands with our smartphones. Right. And I don't want to go on a whole tangent about, how our education system is broken. But financial education, it's so lacking, in middle school, high school, and beyond. And now you shared with me that you're doing something to help that specifically. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, one of the biggest missions of why we do everything we do, from the book, the radio show, the firm, is I realize we've got a very bad, just as you spoke to, Eric, a bad problem, severe problem with financial literacy in this country. And what we've been doing is we've been using some of the proceeds from some of the other business, and we've been creating books and going into the school systems and teaching 8th and 9th graders financial basics. So that my goal is so that one day they're not coming in at 40, 50 years old after the world's taught them some lessons. Maybe they get some tools up front. Because it's kind of funny, we go through however many years of school by the time you get through college or any graduate school you may do, and they don't teach us 3 important things: how to raise kids, how to deal with money, and how to stay married. You'd think that might be pretty good though.
I mean, it's like when you say that, it's like, of course we should be doing that, and we're teaching geometry and
right.
All these things that for successful living we don't need to know. So thank you both for doing that, because that's so so hugely important.
Well, and I'll tell you, just talking about me needing a big reason, a big why. I just had to throw it out there. I'm going to do that until we hit at least we get that education to at least 1 million kids.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a big out there number, but I need that to get me up and keep me excited every day about why we're doing this mission we're doing.
That sounds awesome. So that's part of your why. But let me ask you this: how do you, when dealing with money, how do you make this stuff fun? How do you make dealing with money fun? Is it possible to make money fun, or is it just one of these things we got to kind of just grudge through?
No, I think you can. I think we're talking about let's look at our debit statement last month and look at it this month, and if I'm ahead a little bit, make a game out of it.
Okay.
Or look at our savings account or our investment account, and okay, it's a little, quarter to quarter, it's there's more money in there. Our net worth went up. There's more money than there was last time. So make a game out of it. And sometimes it's fun, especially to see partners or couples get together. They almost start competing when they start seeing who saved this extra $50 here and all that, because it can be kind of fun to see that money accumulate. So ways you can find to make a game out of it makes it less tedious. And another thing that I think's huge is even little victories and tiny goals. Is let's come up with a way to celebrate that. So this month I said this was my goal. I achieved that. Let's go do something that I really enjoy to really motivate me to do that again next month. So that's another way I found to make it fun. Celebrate your victories, even the small ones, financially.
I think that's a great idea. What I want to do is I'm going to take a quick break, and then what we're going to do is we're going to come back, and we have a couple other people who are in the Zoom room with us, and we're going to allow you to answer some of their questions. So, Beau, we'll be right back.
AudibleTrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free download. Trial.com/ADHD Rewired. Trial.com/ADHD Rewired. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free audiobook download.
Get a Zoom room. Go to erictivers.com/Zoom Zoom. I use Zoom video conferencing for the ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group. Zoom makes video conferencing fun and easy. Share your screen, collaborate with a whiteboard, record the audio and video. It's ADHD friendly. Go free or go pro, but go to erictivers.com/Zoom so they know that I sent you. That's erictivers.com/Zoom. All right, we are back, and we're going to get a chance to ask people in the Zoom room some questions. Now, I see Teresa, who is there with her little ones. I don't know if she's ready to ask some questions. I know that she does have some questions, and I see some. Let me open up the chat dialogue here. Let's see. We have someone who's at work. All right, let's start with this. I'm going to start from the chat dialogue. Alex asks, how to avoid impulse buying.
Ooh, that's a good one. So I think one of the best ways to avoid impulse buying is what we talked about. Really give yourself a rule. Again, make a game out of it. Give yourself maybe a 24-hour cooling off rule.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the best things I've done. If it's not in the plan or the normal expenses that you're planning to spend, make sure you still want it 24 hours later.
Okay. Have you ever seen the icebox trick?
Where you actually freeze a credit card?
Where you actually freeze a credit card. And you got to allow it to melt and everything if you're really going to make that purchase.
Now here's another little tip. I'll have a lot of clients, they'll put their money outside of their core, say their living expenses. They'll have it in an online account, something like ING or Barclays. There's a couple. Alliant has some nice ones now. But the reason is, it gives a little more interest because they're not dealing with the brick and mortar, the stores. But the other, it takes about 2 to 3 business days for that money to come from your savings account back into your checking account. So I've had a lot of clients do that because they have a little cooling off period to access that extra money to do stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way because I use PayPal for part of my business, and I know whenever I transfer money from there to my checking account, it does take a few days for it to clear. So I never even thought about that as a good way to kind of use that time delay.
Right.
All right. Let's see what other questions we have. And Alex, I hope that that answer was helpful for you. Tom asked something about the rule of 72 and the rule of 78. I have no idea what that is. Do you have any idea what that is? Sure.
No, that is huge. When we talk about financial literacy, that's one of the big things we'll start teaching kids. The rule of 72 is basically you'll divide 72 by an interest rate that you're gaining on an investment, and it'll tell you how many years it takes an investment to double. So
say that again. So you say the whole thing again. It's like a story problem in math class where like once there's like 3 pieces of information, my brain just goes wah 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 wah.
Do that. Here, let me start with this one. So say I have a 1% an investment, which is very realistic at a bank now, a 1% investment. Mm-hmm. If I divide 1 into 72, what's that?
Are you really going to ask me math questions?
72.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So in that scenario, it would take a 1% investment at the bank. That's what I educate people that are just in fixed things at the bank. That would take them 72 years. Say they put $100 in, it would take them 72 years for that 1% for that money to be $200 to double.
Okay.
All right. And say you could do that with anything. Say if you did it, do another one. So if an investment is at 10%, then you divide that, and it would be 7.2 years for your $100 to turn into $200. But what it is it's a real quick rule of thumb formula to show the power of compound interest, of how money can double when it's not only getting an interest rate, but the interest is actually growing too. You're getting interest on your interest.
And that's where you talk about where the earlier you get into the game of saving and investing, the more it compounds itself.
Right, right.
Can you give us kind of an example? So if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, let's say you're 30 years old,
right.
talk a little bit about how money kind of grows towards retirement. If you are regularly putting in, I don't know, let's say $200 a month starting at 30 years old.
Okay, well, let's do it this way. If at 30, say if we go back to our $5 a day retirement plan.
Okay.
If we did 30, 40, 50, now this is a long time frame, but a lot of people now, they're actually working until later into retirement, until full retirement age. But say at 30, you put the $150 away a month, and we averaged an average market return over time.
And what is that, like 7% or so?
You're looking around 9.6%. And again, that's long periods of time. That hasn't been, that's not counting, that's averages over time. But by the time you were 70, which is your full Social Security retirement age, you would be hitting right at $1 million. Okay.
So $1 million at retirement age if you did $150 a month starting at age 30.
Right. And so all I did was I moved out that same example of the 20-year-old starting going to 60, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the time that's really valuable. And again, as our time frame shrinks, we can increase, hopefully we're making more money and we can save more than the $5 a day.
Okay. Another question from Alex is, do you think it is a smart idea to pay off debt before beginning to save for retirement?
It depends on the debt. If it's credit card, if it's consumer debt, if it's high interest credit card debt, a lot of times it will make sense. But when I talk about a formula, depending on if you could live off of say 70, 80% of your income, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll split that. We'll pay say $200 towards your debt and another $200 towards your savings, so that you're not missing those 2 or 3 years of compounding interest while you're working on the debt. So one of the first things I would do is if somebody gave me a list of all their debts, we come up with the exact plan of we pay off this one first, then this one, then this one. And we can tell by the time this is paid off, you're going to have freed up another $300-400 that can go right back into your savings plan and accelerate that again. So the answer is we really need to see specifically what debts you're dealing with. But in a lot of cases, if there's some money to work with, I would split it so that you don't lose the years of compounding.
Okay, and I'm going to unmute Teresa because I know that she has a question about debt. So, Teresa, how are you?
Hi. I have a noisy baby, so hopefully he will stay quiet for me for a minute. I'm doing well. I was actually have just started listening to the Dave Ramsey show because somebody recommended it. I'm definitely living, paycheck to paycheck and that sort of thing. We have a lot of both credit card debt and student loan debt, and et cetera, et cetera. And I heard Dave Ramsey actually did suggest paying off debt before putting any money towards retirement. But I think that's crazy, especially if you have 401k matching with your employer. Like that's 100% return on investment, basically. So I'm definitely going to keep doing that. Then please be quiet.
No, and that's a good point, Teresa, that if there's match money, that's free money. And it's a no-brainer to do that. Absolutely. So if you're fortunate enough to have a match at work, you fully participate in that and then come up with a debt plan. The key with the debt plan is making sure you come up with the order that's going to get you out of that debt the soonest or free up cash flow the soonest. Because what you find out with all of this, the cash flow you have to work with is what really makes it work.
Because it seems that so much of these what to do is so contextual. It all depends on so many different variables, and I think that's what can be tricky sometimes. It's like, what is your potential earnings in the next couple of years? Like, are you taking a few years off to when your kids are young, then you plan on going back to work? Like those kinds of things. How do you help people kind of figure out what to do if you have someone who's staying at home with the kids for a couple of years, but is planning on going back to work where the family income will go up significantly?
Oh no, that's a great question. And we've done whole radio shows on that. And that a lot of times what happens is if someone stays home, if we were to add up all the jobs they do, I believe the average was something like it would cost about $130,000 to replace all the things a stay-at-home parent does.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
you actually take a pay cut in a lot of scenarios for them to go back to work. And you don't realize it until you go back to work and you have to pay for the child care, the cleaning, the extra food, and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So that again, that's a context of the family and that the dynamic. Some parents, they need to go back to work for their sanity or just because that's their purpose or whatever. But there's a very good analysis of someone staying home financially. Does it make sense to even go back to work sometimes?
Mm. And does education level and what field you're in, do those things all kind of take into account, what you do as far as paying off debt?
Well, not necessarily. What it does is education level does have a correlation to the income you make over your lifetime on average. So different money, but it's all relevant. And I'm going to tell a quick story of the surgeon and the electrician.
Okay.
If we like stories,
we like stories here.
Yeah. So this was a total blessing the way this happened. A couple years ago in the same week, I met two 52-year-old men. They came into my office. They heard the radio show. They wanted me to help them with some stuff. On paper, if you looked at their birthdays and they look very similar. But one was a surgeon. He drove up in his Maserati, had a very nice second lake house here in town, had a base salary of about $500,000. And from everything you saw, this guy, he was living a rich life from what you think. My electrician came up. He was a guy, very country, missing a couple of teeth, made on average about $60,000 a year, and a one-man shop working out of his van. But we got into the numbers, and my electrician, he made $60,000 a year, but he lived off of 30. He's been doing that for 20 plus years. My surgeon made $500,000. He was spending about $600,000 to look.
I'm not very good at math, but I can tell you that math does not work out.
To look like the American dream. So what ends up happening is, this is why I say it's relevant. My surgeon was absolutely dead broke, and this electrician that you never would give a second look, he had $2.3 million in the bank. Simply because he lived off about half of what he made. So I like to tell that story because a lot of times, especially if we look at somebody or see things and say, why am I not there? That's what I would like. Sometimes the story's a little different than what it looks like.
I was listening to an audiobook. I think it's The 1 Minute Entrepreneur, and one of the kind of themes that they kept kind of talking about, and it was, I was sort of glad that it was this sort of oversimplified point, but they kept hitting it. Was that like the number one most important thing in business is you have to make more than you spend. And it's like, you take it at face value, like, well, of course, duh. But like, I think that we don't really realize what that looks like. And like, that's probably the most important basic foundation of financial freedom, even just financial health, is you got to make more than you spend.
Well, and the same thing for our business owners. It's the same exact principles. Take that debit card, use a separate debit card for your business, because we really need to honestly know what's going out, because if we're just guessing, we're probably going to underestimate in a way that's not going to be helpful to us.
What about some tools? Do you have some favorite tools that you like?
Oh, tools, sure. Again, keep it simple. There's
we know how much Tom Nardone loves the phrase "keep it simple, stupid." It's one of his favorite phrases. No, Tom has a podcast, and he was in his most recent episode. He was talking about phrases he hates, and that was actually one of them.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
Any kind of tool that there's Mint. And again, I know it's keep it easy because we're not talking about a group necessarily, that we're not all going to go in and manually enter our entries. But Mint.com has a great tool that will actually pull those debit cards and create your graphs and your summary sheets. It can almost do the job of that bookkeeper I was saying you may want to hire one day. You just got to go through once and attach your checking accounts or your bank account to that, and it'll actually track that.
Okay, so Mint, and I love Mint. The one concern I often hear from people regarding Mint is privacy.
Okay. there's been some privacy issues.
But just people are concerned about it, like having this one company that has all this information.
Has all the information,
What do you think about that?
Well, privacy, it actually is a concern because I've seen more this past year of people have identity theft problems and some fraud problems. So something personally I use, if it's not something where you want to aggregate to where somebody has all this information, I use something, it's called Good Budget. Isn't that? Yeah, Good Budget. And basically it's a digital envelope system. So you talk about Dave Ramsey, which his curriculum came from a guy named Larry Burkett with Crown Financial years ago. And they started the envelope system where you'd literally put money in an envelope for here's my mortgage money, here's my utility money, here's this. This is just a little app that's it's an app for you, but you take some money and you digitally disperse your paycheck into your different envelopes. And as you spend it, you pull it out. Good Budget, it's a simple tool that I think doesn't overcomplicate it to where you're not going to use it. And that's the biggest thing. When people ask me about tools, I say it's the tool that you're going to use. Because there's some nice software and things out there, but it's so complicated and the learning curve would be so steep. I would never consistently use it.
So things like Quicken.
Yeah, Quicken. Yeah, you can automate Quicken. So, but I'm with you. I like that idea of things that you can put on that you have access to. That's not on the cloud somewhere necessarily.
Okay, all right.
On a server.
We have another question again from Alex. We just wants you to talk a little bit about term life insurance versus whole life insurance.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So
I bet you guys never thought this topic was going to get so sexy. We're talking about insurance.
That's right. Well, so insurance is one of the least understood financial tools in people's overall strategy. For the most part, term of course is cheaper. And we liken it to you're running insurance for a period of time that you need that coverage. But one thing I can tell you is whether you have term or whole life, and I'll get into whole life in a second, you need to check and see if your policy has what's called living benefits, because now there's a tool out there that not just if you die, but if you were to have cancer, heart attack, stroke, long-term care, say you had a $200,000 insurance policy, you could actually use that death benefit to survive an illness, which is much more likely to happen. So term, or ask if your policy has living benefits. It's not going to be any more expensive than what you're paying for straight term, but you're going to use it. So the good thing for term, say I have a 30-year mortgage, I can line that up and make sure that if something happened to me, my family could pay off my mortgage. The downside to term is that it's less than 7% of term policies pay out because actuaries, the insurance company, is really good at knowing when you're going to die. They know the statistics.
Isn't that uplifting?
Yeah, so 93% of term never actually pays out to your family. So that's where you get into whole life, and it depends on your strategy and where you are in your plan. But if you do a whole life, it has a cash value policy, and that would actually keep a policy in place permanently. So you could build enough cash value. So just because your 30-year mark passed, and you lived another 10 years, you'd still have a death benefit for your family if the plan necessitates that. And also there's a component of whole life used in strategic planning to where if you have a good 15 plus year window, you have a nice benefit of being able to accumulate that cash tax free. And it's a very important thing to think about now, because with the debt our country has, trillions, government either has to stop spending money. That's one option. The other is to raise our taxes down the road. So in any scenario, when you're doing financial planning, is look for as many opportunities as possible to position things where they'll be tax advantaged or tax free in the future.
So we have a question, and I think I might actually be able to answer this one, but you can echo it. So the question is, well, you could just self-injure yourself when you get old, couldn't you? And my answer to that's fraud. Is there any? The question is, you could just self-injure yourself when you get old.
I think I just saw it self-insure.
And
is it
you're totally right. I misread that. I'm leaving that in because that's.
Yeah, I like injure. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's kind of morbid, and it's I don't know.
but to that question,
Beau, dig me out of this hole. Come on.
yeah. And moving on now to that question, yes, there's scenarios when somebody's accumulated enough assets, they're going to be okay to insure themselves or replace the income they need to if something should happen to them. But the reality is, for most people, if there's not enough assets there to both cover income replacement, mortgage payoff, debt payoff, and retirement income for the surviving spouse. So that's why you kind of leverage and do that. But yeah, absolutely. If the assets are in place, there comes a point where you say, you know what, you don't need insurance anymore. So absolutely.
Okay. What do you think is the one financial tool that most people don't even think about, but they really need to?
You know, and I didn't get to this in tools, but if you just Google financial calculators, well, I think one of the best tools to do is to do some projections about, if I say, like we talked about, if I save $200 a month until I'm 62 years old at 8% interest, what would that do? So at least, so you're giving yourself some starting points and some ideas of where you need to start, and some ideas of how to track as we go. So financial calculators that would actually give you, and you know, you could even start, say you have $20,000 to start with. You put in the 20,000, this rate of interest, I'm saving this much in my plan at work, plus the match. This is what it should be in 20 years. So you start giving yourself some things that feel a little more tangible because you're looking at numbers, actual potential scenarios that you'd have to work with.
And I think one of the issues can be is that one of the barriers might be is that we don't even know what questions to ask. So how do you like find out like what questions to ask? You know, because I think, you know, I know for me, I try to educate myself on this stuff, and I can do it in small doses,
right.
but I don't always know what questions to ask. So like, is there a resource that you have for that?
You know what? I just built a whole course that's coming out in August. That's basically, it's the pre-financial planning course.
Okay.
And the reason is to walk you through the steps, and I'll tell you what they are. It's to walk you through the steps so that you've raised your financial IQ to the point to where you have the information to go have a meaningful conversation and be an active participant in your financial plan with an advisor.
That's a great title, because when you said the title of that course, I wasn't scared. I was like, pre-financial advisor. I can do that. That's right where I'm. That's right where I'm at. Is that available yet, or is that coming out?
It'll be available in August. But I'll tell you, if you want to offer the 10 investments book to some of our attendees, they can get that, and that'll they can follow up from there on how to get in the loop of when things are coming out.
Now, but I know we had actually talked about possibly giving away one of your books. I don't remember the details of that conversation though, so let's just re-talk about that again. And because I know you have your book that's just out. So just talk a little bit about that, about your book, where people can find it, and you know, and did we have a conversation about that, or am I just making that up? I mean, it's just totally possible.
I think it was totally in your head, Eric. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So if I may do a shameless plug,
please. It's not shameless, because you just gave our listeners so much help. I mean, truly, I'm going to go back and re-listen to this a few times, because there's some things I want to like re-listen to certain like parts of it a couple times so it sinks in. Because this financial piece, it's you know, it's a little overwhelming.
Well, and here's the thing too. I'll leave you my contact info email wise. So if any of our listeners have specific questions, because the trick with what I do, and especially on the radio, is on the radio you can only give general advice because you're talking to masses. But what I talk about when we're talking about people is we got to be careful using cookie cutter approaches, because we're people, not cookies, right? So
I think that might be the audio bumper that we use in the beginning of the podcast.
I like that. There we go. Yeah, we're people, not cookies. But that's, you know, I have 6 people very similar ask me questions. The context of their current situation, their goals might dictate it being slightly different. So sometimes that's a warning too. Be a little careful of just blanket rules of thumb, and make sure they fit the context of you and your goals and then what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so your book and
Here it is. Here it is. There's the plug. Okay, so this is a pre-release copy. Releasing with the publisher July 6th through 12th. We're having a big national release. And the 10 investments for true wealth is talking about money, but it's also talking about making sure while we're working on having this healthy financial life, we're also investing in our meaningful relationships. We're investing in things like creating memorable experiences, the things that one day we're going to look back and say, that's what made my life rich indeed. The money's a tool, and I want us to have a lot of it, but I want to make sure we do it in the context of that meaningful, rich life.
That's great. So, and how can people get a copy of that book?
I tell you what, I'll give you, say 3 or 4 copies.
Awesome.
And as a gift to your fans, you can distribute them if they want to send you an email or with their address or whatever. So it can be a gift from you.
All right. So what I'll say is this is, go to the show notes for this episode, and it'll be erictivers.com/ whatever episode number this is. And we'll have a link for more information because sometimes we don't figure out everything ahead of time. But, so I can talk to you now with this idea that there's going to be this link that you can do to get a chance to get this book. So, Beau, thank you so much. And before I let you go, I don't even remember if I told you about this part. But the last part of our show of ADHD Rewired is called the Random Question Round.
Oh, now, wow.
This is the part of the show that has nothing to do with ADHD, which then paradoxically has everything to do with ADHD. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to let the people who are in the Zoom room right now listening in ask you some random questions. I'm going to start it off, though, because I always have a question that I ask people, and that's, if you have an invention that you could create, what would that invention be?
Wow. I think it would have to be some kind of machine that stretched out time. Maybe 48 hours in a day.
I think that'd be great. I think wow, that's why nobody. I don't think anybody has actually said that yet on this podcast. That's amazing. Okay, what about pausing time then allowing us to continue? It sort of has the same. All right, my thoughts are going like on 40 tangents just from that idea. Teresa, do you have a random question? No. All right. Now Tom he's been muted, but I'm going to unmute Tom. I have no idea if he's even available right now. He might actually be cleaning. So Tom, I'm unmuting you. Do you have a random question? He took off. Oh, Tiffany has a question. All right. Let me unmute Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany, how are you?
Good. I just finally pulled in the driveway at work, but I have 3 minutes till I need to go in. So I did have a question that was not the roundup question, but I can ask the roundup question.
We'll make an exception to the rule. So first ask your random question, then ask your financial question.
Okay.
Your random question is, what's your secret superpower?
Ooh, my secret superpower would be... this is going to sound weird, but I'd say it's my ability to make friends.
Very nice.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I found out a long time ago, if you can go out and make enough friends out there, there's not much you can't really accomplish.
Kind of goes to that Zig Ziglar idea of, if you help enough people get what they want, then, you'll be sure to get what you want.
There you go.
All right. And Tiffany, what is your financial question?
And my financial question is asking, do you have any tips on getting on the same financial page as your spouse?
Ooh, good question.
Specifically in regard to personal expenses like entertainment.
Tiffany, thank you for asking that question. That's a great question.
And one of this is funny, the deal with a publisher, another book that people have asked to make is conversations every couple should have about money. Because having those conversations will do more for your relationship, communication-wise and just health-wise, than just about anything you can do. So one of the biggest things, if I can get a couple to commit to once a month, block out 30 minutes, and let's look at our income, our expense, and let's look at our where we are in our assets. And it's not necessarily the funnest conversations to have, but it's got to be that our relationship's worth having these 30-minute conversations, and in the long run, it's going to benefit us both financially and relationship-wise. So as far as getting on the same page, what's happening, Tiffany? Are one of you wanting to spend more typically on entertainment and one not, or?
We're in a struggling small business scenario, and I'm back to work full time to take money off the business. So there's a lot going on. Sure. But I've given up almost exclusively all my personal expenses that we're dealing with entertainment. However, the other party involved has not, there's still the online gaming and the Sirius radio and the Rhapsody and this and that and the other thing, and the excuses are, oh, but this is only $10. Oh, that's only $5. And you look at the expenses and it adds up every month. It's like a good $100 to $200 a month in entertainment when I've given up everything. So I'm very frustrated.
Sure. I think a key is in this conversation is to not go for who's right and who's wrong. It's where are we really? And what's the middle point that we can both work with? Yeah. So he's going to have to be willing to maybe it still might be frustrating, but what if you could get him to spend $100 instead of $200 a month?
Yeah.
Well, I have a thought on that because I actually worked with a couple on this, and we found a solution that worked really, really well. Is that the husband got a separate bank account that was basically it was his money to do whatever he wanted with. So that was the agreement that you were able to put. It's an allowance, and I think that works really well for people with ADHD because it's kind of that permission to spend what you want to, even if it's not a high priority item. So you've planned ahead. Here's the allowable amount that you could spend on whatever frivolous thing you want to do. No questions asked. It's your money. If you want to spend it on gumballs, if you want to spend it on gaming, whatever it is, do what you want. But this is the agreed upon amount that we're agreeing to. So maybe that might be an option.
We started down that road, and then it went. He just started putting stuff on his personal credit card. Yeah, so I don't know that I have any say in it at this point, but that's why I'm like, I don't know what to do.
and Tiffany, would he be willing to maybe even go to counseling, marital counseling?
We were going for about 15 months, and he dropped. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm kind of on my own on this, but
well, keep the conversation going though.
Okay.
And like I said, maybe work for a step in the right direction, because that may later lead to another step, as opposed to I think we should do it this way. Even though I was going to say even though if you're completely right, but again, in a relationship, there's not a who's right and who's wrong. It's what's going to work for us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap this show up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffany. And thank you everyone too for joining us on the in the Zoom room, and this was kind of fun. And just I gave people like 15 hours notice when I posted this on Facebook. And so we got we had 4 people because I would just include myself. And Tom just joined us. Tom, do you have a question? I'm trying to wrap this up now. It's now you come in after we're wrapping it up. What's that?
I said I just wanted to, I'm still here. I didn't want to distract everybody walking around my room cleaning it up. You
were cleaning while we were doing this?
It was your suggestion.
Tom, that's awesome.
Well, I know. Pretty awesome. Hey, Beau.
How's it going?
All right.
Tom, give Beau a random question.
Did you ask the 2 that I sent via Messenger?
We sure did.
Okay, well,
the rules of 72 and 78 or 6 or something.
I was probably in the closet when that.
All right, Beau, why don't you let people know one more time where they can reach you and all that good stuff?
Sure. If you have any specific questions for me, want to check out the radio show we do weekly, or just want to let me know about the book. If you don't go through Eric, just let me know you want the book. Go to beauhenderson.com. Real easy. HENDRSON.com.
All right. Well, Beau, thank you so much. And, being in that we are both in the online business world, one of the things that absolutely helps, whether it's podcasters or, people who are writing books, is reviews on Amazon. So if you check out Beau's stuff, give him a review on Amazon. That's going to be really helpful for him. From the conversations that we had today and my past conversations with Beau, he gets this stuff. He's one of us. So let's support him. Beau, thank you so much for spending the time with us. And, we will be in touch. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of ADHD Rewired. And if you're new to the show, welcome to ADHD Rewired. We are more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. You can see a full outline of this and all other episodes with all the links and other resources mentioned during this interview at ADHDrewired.com. Help support this podcast by checking out my sponsors. I use Zoom video conferencing nearly every day, and so can you. Go free or go pro. But please go to erictivers.com/Zoom so they know that I sent you. And you can get a free audiobook from Audible at erictivers.com/Audible. And next time you shop Amazon, use the Amazon search portal at ADHDrewired.com. A small percentage of your purchase will go to support this show, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. You can also support this podcast by leaving an honest rating and review in iTunes or Stitcher. This really helps other people find this show. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't just be a passive listener, be an active member of the ADHD Rewired community. We are on Facebook. You can like our page, but please submit your request to join our free and growing community. And don't forget to check your other inbox, because I screen everybody before they come into our community. Looking for a coach? If you're still listening at this point and you answered yes, come to my website at ADHDrewired.com and schedule your free 20-minute consultation, or call me at 224-993-9450. Is your school, business, or organization hiring speakers? I provide fun and engaging presentations full of practical solutions that both educate and entertain. Hire me for your next professional development day or corporate training event. Go to ADHDrewired.com/talks. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.